Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the Blue Ox base plate on a 2025 Ford Escape. And the base plate is going to be the structural mounting point that really sets the tone for the rest of your installation when it comes to a flat toe, because certain brands are going to have different mounting points and less trimming involved, and really a lot of times having to fabricate spots to get everything mounted up can prove to be a little bit more tricky than you might expect. That's not the case with this one. This one does a really good job of relocating the adaptive cruise control, giving you a mount for your breakaway switch, as well as your airline if you are doing an air brake system like we did today. And the finished product looks really nice. They've done a fine job of utilizing the outer slats of the grill, so trimming is pretty minimal. One thing that is kind of unique is the 6-pole. It does come with this bracket and it tells you exactly where to mount it, but it does sit fairly low. So that's something to keep in mind when you're normally driving your vehicle. If you're coming up to a tall curb, you might want to stay away. Don't get too close because your 6-pole is going to be hanging down. But to be completely honest, that's going to be the best spot for it because the adaptive cruise control takes up a lot of that space. So while this is how it looks when you're normally driving, when you are ready to flat toe, you'll be able to pop in your arms pretty easily, and I'll show you that now. The arms just go in here, and this is going to be a spring-loaded tab, so all you have to do is turn it pretty much just quarter turn one way, or you can even turn it the other way. It doesn't really matter, and this is going to allow you to get your tow bar hooked up. When you're just going to normally drive the vehicle without being in flat toe mode, to get these removed, you just simply pull the pin, rotate it, and then it pops out. So super easy. Something else that's going to be important is going to be the height of your arms, and that's really going to come down to what hitch height you have on your RV, because you want your tow bar within a 3-inch variance. So you want them within 3 inches of each other, and if it's not going to line up perfectly, a high-low adapter really comes into play, or getting a tow bar like we have today with the eTrailer SD that has a built-in riser drop that'll help you get there. So just so you can do your homework, ours comes in right at about 13 3/4 or about 14 inches. You can measure from the ground to the center of the hitch pin hole on the hitch on your RV and then do the math. If it's over a 3-inch variance, you're going to want to look at a high-low adapter to get that nice and level. When you are ready to hook up and flat tow your vehicle down the road, it's going to be pretty standard, just like every other flat tow. But if you're new to it, not to worry. The base plate really gives you all the mounting points, if you install it correctly, that you would just go down the road and just make sure everything's hooked up and that everything has a home. So first thing, we'll get our tow bar hooked up, and something that's unique is this is an eTrailer tow bar, but if you had a Roadmaster, eTrailer, or really any brand that's not a Blue Ox, don't worry, your tow bar can work with it. You are going to need to get some adapters, and that's what we did today. You can order a brand new tow bar with those adapters generally, but if you have a used one and you need to convert it to this Blue Ox base plate, you can absolutely do that. So we'll get the tow bar, our safety cables. I'm going to get my umbilical. We have our breakaway switch cable. And then on ours today, I mentioned we had air brakes, so we're going to get our quick connect fittings put on as well. And then we'll just get this other side. Now all that's left to do is get our vehicle set up in flat tow mode, and you're ready to tow this down the road. When it comes to flat towing any vehicle, and even your Ford Escape, there's going to be 5 main required components that you need. Sometimes there's going to be additional things depending on the vehicle, and on this vehicle, that additional thing, I'll just tell you now, is going to be a charge line. Definitely add that in. It's a nice easy way to trickle charge your battery so it doesn't die. But as far as the basic components, you're going to need a base plate, and that's going to be the structural mounting point that bolts up to the frame of the vehicle and allows you to hook up the rest of your flat tow components and safely tow it down the road. And that connection point from your base plate to the RV so you can tow it is going to be your tow bar. And with our tow bar, just like pulling a trailer, you're going to have safety cables, not safety chains, but same thing. It's going to keep everything together just in case something was to get disconnected. Going along with that, a braking system is going to be something required, and that's going to be either a portable system or a fixed braking system. Whatever one you end up going with, they're both going to have a breakaway cable. And this is going to be the last line of defense. If everything was to fail, it's going to pull this cable and apply the brakes on the vehicle, bringing it to a stop. That way it's not rolling down the road. Diode wiring is going to be light signals that are transmitted from the taillights on the RV, including your running lights, turn signals, and brake lights, from the 7-pole through the umbilical to the 6-way and eventually to the taillights on your vehicle. No longer do you really see magnetic tow lights much anymore, and a lot of braking systems are going to require tapping into those diode wiring, so it's definitely worthwhile. Beyond that, we do have an air cable on ours today because we have air brakes, so we did the Demco Air Force One, so that's why you see this blue cable. But those are going to be the requirements that you'll need to get this flat-towed. Final thoughts on this base plate. It's a really nice one. I love the fit and finish. They did a really good job of really giving you mounting points, as I mentioned before. And there's really no surprises with it. It's pretty straightforward. If you've never done a base plate installation, just know that you're going to have the fascia taken off, and you're going to want to keep that off to get the rest of your flat toe components on. I'm going to walk you through step by step, and that way you'll have someone guiding you along with those instructions to get your base plate installed. So let's take a look at that now. Now, before we hop into the installation, there's a few things that I would preface just to make sure that this installation goes as smooth as possible for you at home. And the first thing is you're going to be pulling off quite a bit of hardware to get the fascia removed and get the base plate on. So have a nice organized spot to keep your hardware, as well as a safe place to keep your fascia while it's off, because this is really going to be a great time to get the rest of your components all set up while you have the fascia off. It'll make it a lot easier to get everything nice and clean and tucked back before reinstalling. So with that being said, we're going to be a little bit all around this whole front end to get the fascia off, but step by step, none of it's too terrible to do. First thing that we're going to want to do is get the hood opened up and have a 10mm socket. And we're going to go to our radiator shroud that we have here, just kind of this top portion. There's going to be 4 screws that are a 10mm. We're going to get those taken out. There's also 2 plastic push pins that we're going to remove that are on the outside of the shroud, and there's going to be quite a few plastic push pins throughout this installation. So having a trim panel tool, these really make light work of these, make it a lot easier to pry up, but if not, a flathead screwdriver is going to accomplish the same thing. You're just going to go to, there's one side that has a slot built in to where you can either get a screwdriver or a trim panel tool in there, get that center part popped up, then go underneath, and you should be able to get the whole thing. If the top completely pulls out, just make sure you have the bottom part attached with it when you remove it, and that way we'll have this ready for later. So we'll get that one, and then we'll get this one. And then from here, we're going to head to the wheel wells. On each wheel well, we're going to be removing 8 plastic push pins, and they just start kind of down here by this small mud flap and go up. Now there is one that's recessed up here. I don't think we need to remove that. We're really just trying to get this separated back so we can gain access to the bolts that are attaching the fascia to the fender. So that's why this tool is super handy for things like this. It's a little easier, but if you don't have one of these, again, you can use a flathead screwdriver, and if you need extra space, what you can do is hop in the vehicle and turn the wheel. That way this is going to be all open, making it a little bit easier to gain access to this hardware. So we'll get all 8 removed first. Now the wheel well trim, this should just pop out fairly easily. And as you get closer to the top, there is going to be a white clip. I'm going to get that removed by just popping down on the tab. Once I get this popped out, I'll show you what it looks like. You can also slide the clip out, which ours just popped out. Just make sure that you hold on to that long term. But this is what we're looking for, is the gap between the fender and our fascia. This is going to be separated. And peeling back this wheel well liner, you're going to find that there's going to be 2 10mm bolts. So they're facing up. So this front one, if you kind of just feel up here, there's one here, and then there's one here. They're a little tricky to get to. For something like this, I would recommend a swivel head. I've been using a 1/4 inch ratchet, and that seems to be fairly easy, but we'll get those taken out. And then we're just gonna repeat the same process on the other side. To keep this out of the way, what I like to do is just fold up some shop towels and press this in here. Don't peel it back too far. You don't want to put a crease in the plastic, but this will at least give you a little bit of working room. Here's a closer look at that white clip, and this is going to live just in this slot, and it pops out fairly easily to just slide it back. So if you can do that, great. But if it's still attached, you can push on these tabs to get this to separate. Just make sure that you don't damage this clip, and you keep it handy, you know. So if you slide it out of here or pop it out of here, either way, but that's what it's going to look like. That should make it a little bit easier to help you get that removed. Underneath our fascia, we're going to want a T30 Torx bit as well as a 7mm socket. And you're going to find the T30s. These just go across right here, so it's going to be 10 total. So you'll have 3 here, 2 on the bottom, and then a repeat on the other side. So we'll get those removed first. And the 7mm socket is going to be removing the 4 screws that are attaching this underbody panel to the fascia. So let's get that taken off as well. So we're going to get ready to pull the fascia off, and I highly recommend having an extra set of hands. It does get pretty cumbersome to pull this off, and you obviously want to make sure it doesn't get damaged in the process. So something that we do here just to help that is put painter's tape along the edge of the front fender as well as the fascia. And as you're popping this off and also putting it back on, it does have the potential to rub against each other and it can scratch the clear coat. So let's try to keep this not damaged during the installation, so that's going to help. That extra set of hands, as you start to pull this off, don't yank it back too far because there's going to be electrical connections that will need to separate, and I'll point those out, but having that extra set to hold on to the fascia while someone else unplugs it really makes it a lot easier. And things that we'll do before we start prying it off, this top clip, so if you pull back this shroud that had those plastic push pins, right here where we had that 10mm, if you just push back on the fascia, it should start to kind of unloosen like that. And we'll do that on both sides, so that way it's not locked in when we're trying to pry this back. And when we start to remove the fascia, you just start at the corner. It's actually pretty easy here. And you just start pulling back on the plastic, and it's just going to be a series of clips, except on the Fords here, these can get a little tricky. Don't pry straight out. What there is this small locking tab. And I've gotten them through here before, but sometimes it's easier if you just reach back. Hopefully you can see where my fingers are, but the clip is right about here. If you press down on that, that should unlatch, allowing this to drop down. But don't pull it straight out. There's alignment tabs, and we don't want to damage this in the process. The Escape reminds me a lot of the Maverick, and the Maverick is a little easier to get this by hand. So what I'm going to do here is use a trim tool. This is just plastic, again, so it doesn't scratch anything. And that plastic tab, as I push, you can hear it kind of snap. There is a backside to it as well. So I'm trying to push that with my fingers. Oh, there we go. So as that pops out, this is that clip. And so this is what snaps into place. So just pushing that is going to unclip it and allow this to drop down. So do that on both sides. So with both sides popped off, I have Daniel helping me here. Like I mentioned, there's going to be some plastic clips along this area potentially. Ours came off pretty easily. So as we look, driver's side, there's really no connections we need to worry about. On our passenger side, we have this large main harness, and these are actually fairly easy to do. So what we're going to want to do is pry this gray tab. And so if you push on the black part, that's going to unhinge it from there. And when you pop that out, it should push the plug. And then once that's undone, we can set our fascia aside. It's really time to get that base plate in place. Well, there's a lot of things in the way. So we're going to continue to remove And the first thing we'll attack is going to be the ACC, which is your adaptive cruise control. And we don't want to unplug this. Keep this plugged in, but we are going to separate it by loosening and removing the 4 8mm screws. This air dam, this shroud is pretty flexible here, so if you need to move those out of the way to get these taken down, go right ahead. And top ones are pretty easy to see. You'll just raise this up and we'll get all 4 of them taken out. Now we're going to attack the 2 bolts on each side that are going into this little crossbar, and they're going to be a 13mm socket to get those taken out. On the driver's side, we have this large black box with some electrical connections, and this is going to be in the way because we're going to be using the brace that's located right here to bolt up a lot of our base plates. So we're going to want to loosely get this out of the way, and the first thing we're going to attack is this small nut here. It's just a 10mm socket to get that. And then on the back side, it's going to be hard to see here, but there should also be some hardware that's holding that in place. So as I reach back, I find that there is going to be it looks like a 10mm that's back here. So following the wire loom, it kind of snakes down, and if you just feel on the back side, that bolt is going this way. I'm going to grab my ratcheting 10mm socket, we'll get that taken off. And we're pretty loose here. I do believe that we do have some wire loom that we're going to want to pop loose as well, just to make this a little bit easier on us. So I found the other nut. You're going to find this clip that's on the wire loom that goes onto a stud. If you pry that off just with the trim panel tool or flathead, that stud has a nut that's located on it. So as you pop that off, you'll attack that nut as well. Actually a stud, so it acts as a nut. You just loosen that up and this stud comes out, but this is where we had that plastic on and then the nut on top of that. So get this removed, and you should have it to a point where this is loose. But we do have some wires here that the loom is attached to the frame, so just, again, trim panel tool or flathead here, just pop this out. And we're just trying to give ourselves as much space as possible, because when we put the base plate in, it is going to be in here, so the more space you have, the easier it's going to be. So there's a bracket back here with some wire loom on it. I'm just going to loosen this all up, and you know, if we don't need to pop it off, it's not that big of a deal to pop it back on, but again, trying to give ourselves some room here to work. And part of me, I do kind of want to remove these plugs. You probably could, but also I'm just going to see if we can't get away. Just working around it here. I think this should be enough, and if we need to pull off more a little bit later, I'll let you know. This shroud right in front of our radiator or intercooler where we have our vents, this is going to pop off because that base plate will run across here. Super easy to do. We have plastic push pin on each side, so just pry this one off. And then the one that's identical to it on the other side. And then once those are out, if you want to grab a flathead, you might be able to do it with your hands, but there's just a series of kind of tabs here that you can just move to unlock it and pull it back. So on the top ones, if you just pry it up a little bit, they really don't hold on too well, but you know, that snaps out. The bottom's going to be pretty similar here. I think these ones you just push down. So as you can see, I can do it with my hands pretty easily. And then we can slide this off. This will not be reinstalled. So we're going to get ready to put the base plate up, and the first mounting points that we're going to use to hold it in place are going to be those lower bolts that we took out. So have those handy, and pretty well from here on out, any hardware that we're putting in place, we're going to want to put some red Loctite on there, and that's just going to ensure that long term, you know, these aren't going to rattle loose. It's just going to give it that little extra stick there so those bolts stay in place long term. So I'll coat all of these up. And you might want an extra set of hands for this. The base plate can be a little bit cumbersome. It's nice to have someone there to help feed these in, but we'll get these loaded up and then grab our base plate. As we slide this in, we're going to be cognizant of that wiring on the driver's side. And so what I'm thinking what we'll do is slide this through here, and I think that's going to still give us enough room where it shouldn't be an issue. Now, something else that I'm running into here is this adaptive cruise control box. So make sure that it is loose because that's going to cause some issues, and I believe it to slide through here. So let me see if I can't get that passed in. I think that's going to make it quite a bit easier here. So again, just check your wiring, and I'm just going to put one in on each side. That way it'll hold itself up, and then we can get the other ones in place. Now once you get those started, I'm going to zip them down with that 13mm socket, and eventually this base plate, this is going to be bolting up to our bumper beam. So if you want to hold that in place while drawing it back, that should help kind of keep the stress off that hardware and keep it nice and level. So let's cinch this down and see what we're working with. You may have some tolerance issues from the factory. Ours were kind of interesting with the bolts, and so just make sure that you're not overdoing it on these. I ended up lifting the base plate up to take some of the stress off, and then I used a ratchet to get the rest of it down rather than using an impact. I didn't want to snap anything off. So once you get this all sandwiched up, it should be buttoned up against the metal here, and it should be level. You can use the slats on your shutter system to make sure that you have it level, but for the most part, it should be pretty close. Something that you're going to want to look for is this hole that's at the top of the base plate. There's a hole in the frame. Ours, you can see just a little bit of that frame there. That's totally fine. On the passenger side, it's a nice straight shot, and that's what eventually we're going to be looking for. If your pedestrian alert device or this speaker right here is in the way, you can kind of just move this slightly. You can loosen up the bolt. So, you know, don't let that little bit of clearance get in the way. If you need to, again, you can move that up. This plate is going to create a template of where we're going to drill out, and eventually we're going to be taking our 1/2-inch bolts and passing them through here and creating some access holes for our handle nuts to go back, but we need to get these holes made first. So you can take a 1/2-inch drill bit, or you can start with a small one and work your way up. I do recommend having a 1/2-inch bolt ready so when you drill it out you can see that it's going to be able to pass through nice and easy. So I have my drill bit here. I'll just make our 2 holes. With those drilled out, you can see my bolts pass in pretty easily there. So to get our access holes made for our handle nut to slide in, we're going to be in these small rectangles on each side. We're going to use an 1¼ inch hole saw. So you can use this, or if you have a step bit, that's also going to work. The main thing is making it large enough to where we can feed those through. And having a larger opening is going to make it a lot easier to get that lined up for these to bolt up. So I'll drill a pilot hole first, and then I can come back with my hole saw and get those holes made. So I finally got a hole saw that was nice and sharp, and that made it pretty easy. Now I mentioned earlier you could probably use a step bit. You could. The issue I'd see you running into is that step bit generally is going to be a little bit deeper than what our bumper beam is going to allow for. So either way, once you get those holes made, that's going to be raw exposed metal, and we don't want that turning into rust long term. So I'm going to just take some spray paint and just spray up these edges, and that'll again just kind of prevent that raw metal from corroding or rust. You can even hit these up. This is all going to be hidden underneath the fascia, so rather keep this all protected as it is on the front of the vehicle. So now with that access hole made, we can start getting the hardware in place, and we're going to be grabbing the shorter of the 1/2-inch bolts in our kit, so just make sure that you have that ready. We'll put thread lock on here, and there is a small gap behind our base plate and our bumper beam, and we're going to fill that void with 2 washers. This can get a little cumbersome at times to slide this in. Luckily the groove on our bumper beam seems to hold these in place, but if you need to, you can put a little piece of tape or something to kind of get this to align. Mine's pretty close, so I'll grab just a screwdriver to get this aligned before passing our bolt in. And what we're going to be trying to do is feed this flag nut in place and get it started, but you'll see that as far as angle-wise, this is going to be sitting back, and we want to get this as flush as possible. So feel free if you need to put some bends on here to get this to where it'll square up to get this started. That's definitely going to help us out. Once we get that started, we can get the other one started, and then we'll tighten and torque these down. Once you have those started, we can snug them down and torque them with a 3/4 inch socket. And you're going to find the torque setting in the instruction manual, and there's going to be quite a bit more hardware that we're going to have to torque down. So I'd recommend having one handy. We have them here at eTrailer. You can generally go to an auto parts store and rent one for free, but this is going to make sure that long term that it's going to be tight enough to not become loose, but also not too tight, putting any stress on the hardware. So with those torqued down, these arms that we had attached to our nut plate, you can either bend them into the bumper beam, and that's going to be, keep them out of the way, or if you just kind of wiggle them back and forth a lot, eventually that weld will break, and then you can get the rest of the handle off. So whatever you choose to do, we'll get these removed so they're flush. The next point of attachment that we're going to make is going to be using this nut plate, and you'll find that you have a larger diameter at the top and a smaller one at the bottom. And this is going to feed into this channel and eventually bolt up using our hardware. So we have the larger bolt with a split washer. That'll feed through here, and this one lines up just fine, so that's not an issue. But we don't have a hole for the smaller hardware, and that's going to be a 3/8 drill bit to accomplish that. So we'll drill out this bottom hole, and if you do have any metal flashing at the top, we want to make sure that bolt's going to be able to pass through. So if you're struggling to get that to pass through, feel free. You can take that drill bit and walk that out a little bit. So we'll drill this out first, and then we'll do a little modification to get that nut plate up. With that hole drilled, this is going to slide up, and same thing like the front. We can put some bends on here, but this tab right here that juts out, that's going to get in the way and make it very difficult. Temporarily, we're going to bend this out, so I just got a pair of vice grips, and just bending that should really open that up and allow us to pass this through. So big thing what I'd recommend doing is, again, just putting some bends on it and just dry fitting it up to where you can see those threads really line up, and it looks pretty decent overall. Now, when you're passing your hardware on, do make sure that you have a split washer on each of the bolts. And I'm just going to get this started here, and then I'll start the other one. And then we'll just repeat the same process on the other side. You do have that black box, so just if you need to move some stuff out of the way to gain access to be able to drill that hole, by all means you can do that. But yeah, we'll get both of these started, and then we'll tighten and torque these down. While working on this side, I found that if you slide that large harness up, and the same goes for this plug, just off of these clips, or you can pry it off the metal, it doesn't matter. This is really going to open that up. Now I feel pretty comfortable. I can get a drill bit in there without making contact with anything. Once you have that hardware all tightened and torqued down, there's really only a few things left to do. And one of those is going to be our safety cables. And these are going to be the last line of defense. Even though we're structurally mounted up to the front of the vehicle, if anything was to happen and this was to separate, this is going to attach to the base plate and wrap around a part of the frame. So this will be that last line of defense. And so to get this in place, on this side, what I'll do is I'll route our cable through, making sure that we're not going to make contact with anything that's moving, whether it be belts or steering or anything along those lines. And so I passed it through the hole here. I've went around this structural point, and I might just do another wrap, because what we'll do is put our quick link in place here and attach both of our loops. So I'll get this one here and pull out the slack. There's no perfect way to do this. It's really up to you. And also, if there's a excess of cable that's going to be in the way of things, you can absolutely zip tie that up and get it out of the way, because again, this is just last line of defense. But I'll wrap this around, and that puts us perfect on our quick link, and then we can tighten this down. We'll repeat the same step on the other side. Cables are all attached to our base plate. Now we can get our ACC put back in. So just using those same screws that we had, it's going to be a little bit tight to get these ones back here, but I can feed my hand back in and get those tightened. We have the base plate installed, and as I mentioned previous, you're going to want to keep it at this state while you get the rest of your flat toe components set up, including your diode wiring and your braking system. So looking ahead, if you are going to be jumping onto those, we'll catch back up a little bit later and I'll have them mounted up. But it looks as if your breakaway switch, you're going to want to bend the tab to mount here. This side, I'm thinking that we have an Air Force One because we have air brakes. So there's an air fitting. More than likely, I am going to mount it up here. And then your diode wiring, that 6-pole plug, they have mounted on the bottom of the fascia, and it's going to kind of have our wiring going here. So all of that we'll take a look at, and I'll show you where to trim it and how to get everything put back. But at this point, you're ready to start doing the rest of your components. So we'll catch back up a little bit later, and then we'll get this fascia put back on. Hopefully this video helped you get the base plate installed on your Ford Escape. And if it did help, please let us know. We'd love to see those comments, and also if there's something I missed, if there's something I wasn't clear on, please also let us know. That way, next time I do a base plate, I can take a look at those comments and reviews and really try to make this as best as possible for neighbors like you. That way you can get this done at home. But if you watch the video and maybe determine this is beyond your scope or more than you really want to tackle yourself because you don't have the time, the place, the tools, or even the want to do it, I totally understand, but don't let that hinder you from getting your vehicle flat toe ready. If that's the case, you can find someone close to you by using our dealer locator. You can put in your zip code and find shops near you that can get this all installed, as well as the rest of your flat toe components, leaving really just the joys of flat towing to you without having to worry about the install. My name's Brad. Thanks for watching.